Hello and welcome. My name is Philip Sheridan. I'm the founder of Discover Tai Chi, and in this next series of 4 videos we're going to be looking at 4 sort of key themes for people who are seated or wheelchair users or people who need to spend prolonged periods of time seated in a chair. So we're going to look at some adapted and modified movements from Tai Chi movements and Qigong movements, some of which might be familiar to you already. I founded Discover Tai Chi in 2016 and I work with my partner Helen, who's a registered occupational therapist. I'm a former professional educator at the University of Leeds at the School of Medicine. Not teaching Tai Chi, by the way, but teaching student doctors. So we come from a very kind of rigorous research-based perspective. So everything that we're going to talk about over this next series of 4 videos will be kind of grounded in the evidence base and research. So this first video is a fundamentals video. It's going to basically give you some ABCs, so to speak, in terms of some fundamental movement patterns and some principles as well that will carry over into the next 3 sessions. I'm going to speak briefly about a little bit of safety and comfort. We ought to, shouldn't we? So move comfortably is the main dictum that we use in our classes. Stay within a comfortable range of motion for you. I appreciate that we're a very diverse crowd of people. We each come with our own range of issues and abilities, and I'm really sorry I can't speak to each and every one of you as an individual, so we have to use a little bit of common sense. So move comfortably within a range that suits you. So for example, if we have a movement that perhaps takes an arm or both arms towards going overhead, but that's not comfortable for you or not even possible, then we can adapt and use movements that stay maybe at simply shoulder height. So where I might be giving cues for certain movements, use your common sense. I appreciate some people will have more or less mobility and motility in their hands and fingers. Again, don't worry too much about that. Work with what you have. You'll find that we use a lot of mental imagery in Tai Chi and Qigong, and perhaps that's the foundational principle that we'll want to really get across in these 4 videos. So move comfortably. The other sort of key principle I want you to take on board is that you don't have to do all the movements all in one go. Pick and choose what you like. Maybe pick a favorite and just explore it and get to know it and get to know how your body responds to that movement. We want to kind of bring some of the underpinning philosophy of Tai Chi and Qigong here as well. So that's about being kind to yourself and not putting yourself under pressure. So you might even want to simply watch and observe these videos and just get an overall sense of the movements and how I introduce those movements before you actually dive in. Or if you prefer and you just want to get stuck in and you want to follow along, come what may, that's okay as well. Again, I don't want to be too prescriptive. I want you to be able to engage with these videos in the way that suits you best. So pick a time and a place where you feel comfortable when you want to dip into these videos. As I said, you can watch them in their entirety, or you can just pick a section that perhaps you want to explore. So that's enough of that, I think. Let's begin to get into our first movements. And I'm going to start with my hands resting just on top of my legs or on my knees. Again, wherever's comfortable for you. If we can, and again, I appreciate this will mean different things for different people, we want to have the sense that we are growing up from the ground. So that could be simply within the shoulder girdle, or it could be at various points within the torso. For some people who use a wheelchair but can also stand up and maybe even walk around a bit, you may be able to feel and put pressure down through the feet. So again, I'm speaking to a wide range of people here. So just have that sense of growth. We don't want you to get too stiff or too kind of prescriptive here. Just have this gentle sense of upwardness. And we're going to do this movement called Qi Shi. It's a fundamental opening movement that we find in Tai Chi forms, and it really sets the scene nicely and is one to explore. If you wish to follow along, please do, or if you wish to observe, please do. But it's as simple as this. We're going to just let the wrists gently rise to shoulder height. And then let them settle in place. And we can come to rest back on the legs. Let's have a go again. So the wrists are just ahead of the hands, and on the down they're slightly ahead of the hands as well. What that looks like is if we imagine that I've got a loop of string around my wrist, and on the upward movement it's gently being pulled up, and you can see the hands are just behind, and then on the downward movement, if I pull on the loop of string, it pulls the wrist down, so now the fingers are just trailing behind. In some Tai Chi forms you will see people really emphasize the fingers dragging behind. We're not really going to do that or emphasize that. If you go on YouTube and look up Tai Chi, you will find thousands of videos, and pretty much everyone is doing something in a way that is different from everyone else. Sometimes people fall out about these things, but what we want to do is just have this nice subtle sense of leading with the wrist. Shall we have a go again? This time we'll do a set of 3, okay? So see if you can keep the shoulders neutral, and it's just a sense of the hands rising and then falling. And you notice that the elbows are pointing down. I don't want the elbows out to the sides. I want them just naturally lifting the upper arm and the forearm, just like so. Let's do that one more time. Lovely. A very useful and quite a nice analogy for you to maybe think about and explore is that we create a landscape with our arms, and this helps us keep a relaxed shoulder girdle and get a really nice line from the shoulder through to the hands. It looks a bit like this. If I kind of come up to the top with just my left hand here of that movement, we've got this from the shoulder, a little drop down into the elbow, and then a rise up to the wrist, and then a little rolling off to the fingers. And we like to think of that as a little landscape, so to speak. If I turn, you can see this rolling up and down type line, rather than it being overextended, or deep valleys as we sometimes call it, where we have this very deep drop into the elbow and a steep rise. We want this rolling kind of landscape line. So that's something to look out for in that movement. So let's have a go one more time. So we're lifting up, the wrists gently lead on the movement, and then gently down. And one of the questions that arises pretty quickly in Tai Chi and Qigong is, what about the breathing? For our purposes, we really wish you to just relax, not think too much about the breathing. The general rule is that when we're initially learning movements, we want to just focus on being relaxed within the movements. If we bring our attention onto our breath a little bit too early, it can mean that we actually build more tension up because we're concentrating on the breath, and that tends to mean that we tighten up. And that's actually the opposite of what we want to achieve. We want to achieve a sense of relaxation. So don't worry too much about the breathing. If maybe you've practiced Tai Chi or Qigong before and you're a little bit more familiar with these principles, then you can begin to imagine that this movement lends itself very nicely to a nice relaxed in-breath and then just a nice out-breath on the down. So that's something that you can explore. What we'd like to say is that the movement fits the breath, not the breath to the movement. That's a very important principle in Tai Chi and Qigong. Movement to the breath, not the breath to the movement. So we need to be mindful of that. And again, for some people, in relation to their particular condition, getting sufficient air into their lungs may actually be quite a challenge. So again, I don't want people straining or putting themselves into a contrived sense of moving or coordinating their breath, which actually creates more tension. If in doubt, always resort to just a nice relaxed breath cycle and just let yourself focus on the movements. So we can do that with Qi Shi. I can simply focus on keeping the arms and shoulder girdle down and relaxed. And if I wish, like catching a wave, I feel the moment at which I start to breathe in. And then as soon as I breathe out, that's the cue to let the hands settle. So explore that if you wish. That's going to be an option throughout all the videos. If I ever mention breathing, don't ever feel that you are compelled to breathe in a certain way. So that's our first opening movement. Very simple, Qi Shi, but it sets the scene. Just a few of those can have a sense of calming on our mind and our general state of well-being. Let's explore another movement that acts as a transition, often from one hand and arm position to another. So it's a very important movement. And it simply involves holding an imaginary beach ball. Not a really big one, but one that's maybe shoulder width if I was to turn it around. So a beach ball, if it is head size or football size, you may be a bit too small, and if you've ended up with your hands a long way apart, maybe you've gone a bit too wide. See if you can find that happy balance. And I'm going to have my left hand on top if you wish to follow along. So this top hand gives us a very important rule as well, which is whichever hand is on top, that's the direction in which we're going to turn our shoulder girdle and our torso. And again, that's relative for different people. So I'm just going to turn in that direction, my torso or shoulder girdle. Not too far, you'll notice. I've not really stretched that turn out to my left. In fact, my hands are pretty much just over my left knee. And then I turn the hands over, keeping them in the position as if they really were holding a beach ball. And my right hand has now come on top. There it is. And I simply turn in that direction, because that's the rules of the road. And as my hands kind of come over my right knee, my apologies, we rotate that ball over. The left hand's come on top. And we turn back to the left. So you get the idea. Whichever hand is on top gives us an indication of where we're turning next. Right hand on top, turn to the right. As I rotate that ball, this can actually be quite a coordination challenge for some people, to simply keep the hands in place. Sometimes they end up squeezing together as we rotate or pulling apart. And if you think about it, we would either pop our beach ball because we've squeezed it too far, or we've dropped it because the hands have come apart. So rotate, right hand comes on top. Another analogy is that we're holding something rather precious, like a vase perhaps, and therefore we really don't want to drop it. So that can help us maybe think about keeping our hands in position as we simply go through this very simple movement. At the same time, it's a very nice mobility exercise for the shoulders, head and neck, which is especially important for people who are wheelchair users or spend a long time sat in their seat. So I'm just going to come back and let the hands relax and melt away. So we call that hold the ball, but it enables us, as you can see, to transition the hands from one side of the body to the other. And that will reveal itself as we go on and explore other movements. But that's one to practice. Again, you can begin to link these movements together, and that's what I'm going to do towards the end of this video. So let's explore a head, neck mobility movement that also gives us another opportunity to explore another kind of transitional movement as well. So we're going to use our imagination that we've got two sort of coffee tables on either side of our seat or chair, just at hip or knee height. So we're using our imagination. I'd like you, excuse me, to place your right hand flat on that imaginary table, and our left hand and arm are extended out in front of the left shoulder. Again, notice that nice line through the arm. I haven't got a deep valley in the elbow, and nor am I overextended. You'll notice that the back of the hand is facing away and the palm is facing in toward me. We could imagine that we're holding a mirror in this palm. So I can gaze into that palm, and then just turning the head and neck, I'm going to take the hand out wherever feels comfortable to you, as if I'm gazing into that mirror. Going to turn back to the center, and then we're going to come into that hold the ball position. There we are, left hand on top, but we slide the hands past one another. The left hand falls onto a table, and now my right hand is extended outward, holding that mirror with the palm in. So we've done a transition from left to right. So I turn the head to follow the hand as it goes out to the side, and I turn the head and neck to follow, and then we just bring the hands into our hold the ball position. Here's my right hand, here's my left hand, and then imagine that we draw the hands past one another, sliding them. Left hand comes forward, right hand finds that coffee table, and then once again I can turn the head to follow the hand on the left side as I take it round in an arc and then back again. So this is a nice head, neck, shoulder mobilizer. Hold the ball, left hand on top, slide the hands past one another. There's the right hand out in front of the shoulder, left hand down, turn the head to follow the hands, and back. So we'll come back to our hold the ball position. I've got the right hand on top, and then I'm just going to let the hands melt away. So there's a nice mobility exercise. You'll notice that you'll probably feel muscles within the shoulder girdle working quite hard because we have this arm extended out in this landscape format, not too deep in the elbows. That's examples of principle that we find in Tai Chi called Peng, P-E-N-G. And Peng translates as parasol or tent or canopy. So you get the idea that perhaps this arm could be the rib of an umbrella, and if I overextend it, I overstretch the fabric of that umbrella. If I don't extend the ribs too much and actually have them too deep, then we don't actually have much of a structure. But if we have it just right, then we have this sense of a taut fabric covering with all the ribs supporting it. So you could imagine if I had both hands out, I'm making a kind of umbrella type shape with two ribs, with my torso and head being the axis. And if you imagined all the ribs around me in fabric, you get this sense of a structure that's created through pressure going outwards through the arms and then tension created by the fabric all around. So that's a really important principle called Peng, P-E-N-G. And it simply means tent, canopy, or parasol. So that gives you a really interesting idea. You may find that as you practice some movements that your shoulders begin to lift and we build tension up, and we need to purposefully let them relax. This gives us another interesting idea or sense of imagery, which is to imagine that our shoulder girdle is like a coat hanger, and that we hang, just like a coat, on a coat hanger, our shoulder girdle, so that our hands and arms just hang loosely. So that can be a useful exercise in itself, just to let the hands and arms hang loosely as if suspended from that triangular shape of a coat hanger. And we are imagining almost that we put our hands and arms via the shoulder girdle on, and then we just keep them nice and relaxed and hanging from that structure. So combined with that principle of Peng and that principle of the coat hanger, hanging the hands and arms, we get this nice line from one hand to the other as we go through this mobility exercise. So that's another one for you to simply explore, and take your time to do it. And don't forget that it takes a little bit of practice, maybe 5 minutes every day, or when you feel like it, to just begin to get a feel for how these movements and principles fit together. So let's use our hold the ball position and our parting the hands position to do a Tai Chi movement called part the horse's mane. It comes from Yang style Tai Chi. You also find it within other Tai Chi styles. I should mention that there's 5 main Tai Chi styles. There's the originating style called Chen, from Chen village in Henan, China. And from that sprang Yang Tai Chi, which is probably the most well-known and popular Tai Chi style around the globe. And then we have 2 Wu styles. One's simply called Wu, and then the other is called Wu Hao. You'll find less evidence of those styles being practiced, but they are out there. We actually know someone quite local to where we are who does Wu style. And then the most recent style is Sun style. Sun spelled S-U-N, and that's originated by a gentleman called Sun Lu Tang, and was really formulated in the 1920s. So actually a very modern style. So those are our 5 main styles. But over the course of time, lots of derivatives of those styles have propagated throughout the world as different people have brought their own sensibilities and idiosyncrasies to them. So as I say, if you begin to do a search into Tai Chi and Qigong, you will find people performing movements in their own ways and according to different kind of emphases as well. Some might have an emphasis on the martial arts and self-defense. Others might have an emphasis on the health and well-being side. And some have an emphasis on sport as well, because Tai Chi is performed at a very high level in a similar way to gymnastics as a sport and is an incredibly rigorous discipline. We're very much within that health and well-being domain, so that's very much how we are practicing. So let's have a go at part the wild horse's mane. We're going to start off with our hold the ball position. And I've got my left hand on top if you want to have your left hand on top. Remember those coffee tables that we have on either side. We'll be using those coffee tables again for the bottom hand to find. And we're simply going to slide the hands past one another and bring the right hand out in front of the right shoulder. Left hand is down, but unlike that hold the mirror position where the palm was really facing inward, here the hand has kind of fallen over a little bit, just like so. It hasn't gone fully floppy, it's just kind of opened. It's as if you're gesturing someone like so, or maybe pointing something out. That's a nice way to think about it. We still have that nice line. And then we come back to our hold the ball position, only now we've got the right hand on top. We slide the hands past one another, and now we can practice that movement. There's the left hand. Just imagine that it lays out a little bit, like so. Come back to hold the ball, and we've got our left hand on top. Slide the hands apart. And we get this nice movement. As you begin to build confidence, you can create these smooth transitions from one to another. That's another kind of key principle in Tai Chi, that we have these smooth, continuous, slow, progressive movements. We're moving slowly, purposefully, deliberately, but in a very relaxed way as well, so that the brain or our mind has time to think and feel. So I'm just going through the motions of part the wild horse's mane while talking, and hopefully giving you an opportunity to have a little practice of those movements. Don't worry if we're out of sync. If you have been following along, this is my right hand on top, and then I'm simply letting my hands melt away. So, there's some fundamental movements that you can practice. We can put our opening movement, do you remember, Qi Shi, together with, for instance, part the wild horse's mane, and we can create a micro little sequence. And it seems from the research very recently that very short, simple micro sequences of Tai Chi or even Qigong movements are actually just as good for us as trying to learn very long, complicated forms or sequences of movements that can go on for 20 to 30 or even 40 minutes, as I used to learn when I was first learning Tai Chi and Qigong back in the 1980s. So that helps us, doesn't it? That helps us understand that we can have simple movements that we can explore and enjoy and actually practice them in a short space of time. That tends to mean that we're more likely to practice them for a start because it doesn't feel too onerous and too much of a challenge. So let's have a go, shall we? We're going to use our opening movement Qi Shi. I'll transition into a hold the ball movement, and then we'll do maybe 2 or 3 or 4 part the wild horse's manes type movements before we come to a rest. So if you wish, follow along, or if you prefer, observe first of all and then have a go a little later. So here we are, start position, hands top of the thighs or on the knees, and I'll count us in. 1, 2, 3, off we go. Shisha, so we take our time. Try not to hurry. And before the hands begin to rest on the knees, we're going to just let them hover. And let's have our right hand on top. So we come on to that hold the ball position. So that means that the left hand, the bottom hand, will slide past the right. The left hand comes out and the right hand has come down to that coffee table. And then we turn the palms. The left hand will come on top. There's our hold the ball position. And then we slide the hands past one another. Left hand going down, right hand out in front of the shoulder. Turn. Let's go again. I've got the right hand on top, so slide the hands past one another. Right hand finding the coffee table. Left hand out in front. Hold the ball, left hand on top. Slide the hands. Lovely. Come back to hold the ball, right hand on top, and then let the hands melt away. There you have it, a very simple micro Tai Chi form based on 2 movements from Yang style Tai Chi. We find that these micro movements are really popular in our community classes that we teach. And when we're teaching health professionals how they might integrate Tai Chi or Qigong into their clinical settings, again, we tend to emphasize the idea of using micro sequences rather than trying to use big, long, convoluted, choreographed series of movements that, again, people just begin to find overwhelming. So I hope that's been a very useful introduction to some fundamental movements. They're useful mobility exercises for the head, neck and shoulders, but they also confer a sense of calmness and serenity, because as we move very smoothly, quietly, purposefully, we're actually having quite an impact on the state of the brain and also our general bodily state as well. Think of it like a volume slider or a volume knob on an audio device, and we're turning it down simply by moving slowly and being a bit more focused or mindful, if you wish, of what we're doing. We're mindful of what's going on inside us. We're also mindful of what's around us as well. We're mindful of our environment. So let's finish off, and we'll be doing this next exercise in each of the videos, and we'll build some imagery into it as well. A simple breath awareness exercise that you can use at any time for your own purposes to just create a little bit of breathing space or headspace for yourself. It's very simple, but it seems to have some roots that go back quite some way. We have some recorded evidence for this from some Chinese texts that go back over 2,000 years. We're going to use our hands simply as physical cues. We're going to have our right hand covering our heart. Our left hand is right down on the lower abdomen, maybe just below the navel. And we're just going to take a breath in, fill the lungs, let it go. And unlike maybe other breath exercises that you may have done in other movement modalities, for instance yoga, we're not going to focus on the breath as such in any particular way. We're simply going to follow the breath as it goes in and out of its own accord. The other nice thing about this top position with this right hand is that you should be able to feel your heartbeat. If you prefer, you can close your eyes, because that can help you just focus gently on what's going on. So if you wish to close your eyes, please do. So just follow the breath in and out without trying to control it. Just notice the rise and fall of a rib cage. You'll also feel the heartbeat, as I mentioned. But all we're doing is following the breath. What you'll probably find as we go through this breath awareness exercise is actually the breath becomes quieter, so to speak, or more refined, i.e. it might also become really quite imperceptible because we're moving into what's called a relaxation state, or what Professor Herbert Benson at Harvard Medical Institute might call the relaxation response. So you can spend maybe a minute or two in this hand position, just following the breath. But when you're ready, and perhaps you're beginning to find that your mind is wandering, take this top hand, slide it down off the rib cage, onto the soft squidgy bit, the solar plexus, just below the rib cage. The right hand will be above the left hand. And once again, just get familiar with that hand position. Don't try anything with regard to breathing in any special way. Just let your breath do what it wants to do. Evolution has had millions of years to refine our breathing patterns, and we breathe automatically, autonomously for most of the day. That just shows what a refined process it is. And we're just tuning into that process. We're listening, so to speak. So just breathe naturally. Follow the breath. Close your eyes if you wish. And just trust the process. We've got no expectations. We're simply breathing. And we're appreciative of that fact. Okay. Bring the right hand down and it covers the left hand. So both hands now are in the bottom position. This is our final position. And once again, we're simply going to sit quietly and bring our awareness to follow our breath. Eyes closed if you wish. But it's as simple as that. But sometimes the simplest things have quite powerful and profound effects. It's often in this bottom position that we find that people have become really relaxed and actually are really quite comfortable and might want to stay in that position for some time. And if you've got the luxury of the time to do so, then there's no reason why you shouldn't. For our purposes, I'm going to ask you to take your hands, bring them back to your legs. We need to bring this first session and video to a close. But that's as simple as it gets. Over the next coming videos, we'll build on this breath awareness exercise by bringing in some mental imagery. But for now, you can just practice that. The hands act as a stage process to help us focus on the breath. And you can do it anytime, anywhere. Use it as a bedtime routine. You can actually lay down and go through the hand positions on a laid down position, or if you're having an afternoon nap, you could use it as a kind of prelude to having a nap. Or if you're in a stressful job, I would sometimes use this exercise before teaching a group of students. I would actually sit in a toilet cubicle, strange as it may sound, and just go through that process. It takes maybe 2-3 minutes at most to do so, but it can give you a real sense of headspace and calm your nerves and help you get in a better state of mind sometimes. So use it as you wish. I really want you to think of everything that we do over the next videos as tools that you can add to your toolbox that you can use for your own purposes. If you wish to get in touch and let me know how you're going to get on with these videos, you can do so at info@discovertaichi.uk, and please do let us know how you're getting on. So I hope you've enjoyed this first opening video. In our next video, we'll be exploring some of the movements from a Qigong set, called the 8 Strands of Brocade. So until next time, happy practicing, take care, and goodbye.